Of the PFF forecast. This is the second Sunday of October, and we've got a new crew with us today. We're going to keep mixing it up on the forecast. Myself, Brad, and Ben Brown will open it up. We've got Arjun Menon coming on to guess the lines. We're going to talk about Brandon Staley's decision to go for it on fourth down, how all of our bets did this week. Thankfully, lock of the week hit. We'll see how the rest of them did. And whether the Cowboys, I don't know, the Cowboys should stick with Cooper Rush. That seems to be what everyone wants to talk about, so we'll talk about it. Let's rock. What's up, everybody? Joining us live or listening, perhaps on a Monday morning. I'm George. I've got Brad Spielberger and Ben Brown with me this evening. This is the PFF forecast. We're going to keep mixing it up a little bit. We've got, no Eric Eager once again, and so we're going to continue to bring on some of the best that we have at PFF. And tonight, I should say, right after the Bengals, thank God. The Cincinnati Bengals covered 3 and 3.5 by losing only by 2 to Baltimore. That actually was our lock of the week on the forecast, which you can listen to obviously on Wednesday night and Thursday morning and Friday, Saturday as well. It hit, thank God. Let's start with this, fellas. How much money did you guys win on the Jets? Was it as much as I did?
I actually did bet them. They weren't necessarily my biggest spot on the weekend, but I did buy into them, and I actually bought into them a lot more. Post Teddy Bridgewater injury situation. I think they were up like 2-0 or something at that point, and there was a stretch where you could actually get them at plus money still in game, and I definitely took them at that point. So that did work out, but it was much more of a fade, I would say, the Miami Dolphins than buying into New York long term, I would say.
Oh man, I wish in hindsight, we talked about that with the Circa Millions, which for anyone that's not familiar, you pick 5 games against the spread, and that's the competition for the week. And there's, I don't know, a couple thousand, 5,000 or so entries. They do that every single week. They were one that we considered, ended up not going with them. I'll tell you one that we did go with, and I feel absolutely horrible for this. This was by far my worst beat of the entire weekend, were the Detroit Lions. As smart as I felt watching the Bengals cover that game, I felt absolutely ridiculous betting the against the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick. In hindsight, against Jared Goff, who he just completely owns, going back obviously to that Super Bowl victory where they held him to 3 points. And maybe this is my hot take of the weekend, fellas, is that Giselle is going to the younger Tom Brady. She's going to be dating Bailey Zappi in a couple of weeks here. But I ended up going 3-2 in that contest. Have had a winning week every single week and eked one out with the Bengals victory. But Brad, how did everything go for you today?
Yeah, so the picks in the pod, I'm 1-3 right now. Like you said, thankfully our Bengals, which was our consensus pick and our biggest pick. I didn't take the Cowboys on the podcast last week, but that was my biggest play of the week. That Rams offensive line right now is a mess, and they couldn't do anything. Matthew Stafford's a bottom 3 graded quarterback for us this week, so that thankfully that and Bengals kind of saved my weekend.
Yeah, so I did go 3-4 basically on all my recommendations from last week's podcast. It was kind of tough to start. There's no reason I should have ever bought into Green Bay. I do think, and I agree with you, George, that Lions were definitely my biggest loser of the weekend. Seattle as well. I also expected quite a bit more from them. I think they did show a little bit offensively, but defensively they are just so bad. And I did not expect, Taysom Hill to basically go absolutely wild all over the field for him. So that was kind of painful. Props, thankfully, came home. I basically just loaded up on under reception props for like the 3rd straight week, and cashing those basically left and right from a player props perspective. So that did keep me somewhat afloat. But yeah, the Cardinals was a good one. The Jets was a good one. But yeah, the Lions, I don't know if I can go back to the well on them anymore, to be honest with you. So we'll see. It was good. The Bengals getting there definitely helped. And I do think, we're definitely live here for Monday night. I can say that much.
Yeah, actually, I think my ended up being my biggest cash bet of the entire weekend was Melvin Gordon under 58.5 rushing yards, which mercifully hit. It was a complete lock, and then it goes to overtime, rips off a couple of large runs. Luckily, finished at 54. Going back to what we do on this podcast for anyone that's new, any new members of the printing press, we guess the lines and we decide whether we're going to bet a line that we have differently. Last Sunday night, I bet the Bears. That looked dead in the water for a while.
Right.
They ended up covering. I bet the Titans. They ended up covering. The worst beat I felt that I had this entire weekend wasn't actually the Lions. The Lions I deserve to lose. But the Seahawks continue to be. They might be the most surprising team thus far, maybe the most impressive team relative to expectations, I would say, of the entire NFL season. They were 4.5 last Sunday night. I believe it closed, was it 5.5? And I don't know, we'll look at Kevin Cole's adjusted scores in the morning and see, but felt like they deserved a much closer result in that game. Ended up losing that one. Had Cleveland +3. That closed 2. Ended up winning that one. Did not win Tampa Bay -8.5, and then Cincy +3.5 did come through, which was thankfully good. Did you guys bet? I think you did, Brad, the Cowboys.
Yeah, so hit the Cowboys big time, which was nice. Also, I'm guessing you may not have seen the Michael Dixon punt snafu in the Seattle game.
Oh, I did.
Okay. Because if I were you, I'd probably be talking with a little bit more vitriol in my voice as I was walking through that game. They talked about it afterwards that they planned to do a new rugby style kick, and it was this whole thing they've been working on for weeks. I will say this, though. We're giving Pete Carroll his flowers. We're giving him vindication. Geno Smith was once again our highest graded quarterback. He coaches defense, by the way. Just a little FYI to the people. Their defense is atrocious. And Pete Carroll's getting all this credit for moving on from Russ. His side of the ball is, Andy Dalton with no Olave, Michael Thomas, or Jarvis Landry for the second half of that game was still moving the ball with ease.
Yeah, it was all Taysom Hill, right? It was just completely bonkers. And I do think that the Seattle defense specifically, if they were even a top 15 unit at this point, they would definitely be in contention to win the NFC West, which is kind of crazy. Probably the 49ers are going to run away with it, but the Rams look bad. I think the Cardinals, have been decent in spurts, but are also generally pretty bad. So I would say, if he was actually coaching respectfully on the defensive side of the football, it would be a very interesting season at Seattle, which is not what I expected whatsoever. I do think, though, the best call on any podcast at any time was when George tried to suggest the Houston Texans money line at +260 on Wednesday night, and did say they were a really good bet at +7 as well. Look, that one was a layup, they say at the end, right? So,
yeah, if only I had chosen them instead of the freaking Detroit Lions.
Right.
What an absolute nightmare. No, the Seahawks, they are top 10. They're 8th in expected points added per early down pass play. If you would have said that was going to be the case with Geno Smith, people would have laughed you out of the building. I think Bill Barnwell tweeted this out if anyone hasn't seen it. So Michael Dixon just looked like he forgot how to punt. And it was the punt button on your controller just didn't work. And then of course, Taysom Hill goes absolute bananas. I guess, so on the flip side of the Seattle Seahawks, and I think the Seahawks are probably my most impressive team thus far this season, not necessarily this week. The Rams have to be the least impressive relative to expectations. I think for me thus far, they had the worst expected points added per early down pass play. I think, Brad, you mentioned it, Micah Parsons hurt his groin. He was limping around and still trouncing the Rams offensive line. Joseph Noteboom, I think Sam Monson called this out on his hit that he does every Friday on Kay Adams' new show on FanDuel TV, which everyone should check out. It's called PFF'd Up. And they drink and talk football, which is awesome. But Joseph Noteboom had allowed as many pressures so far this year as Andrew Whitworth did all of last season. We're through a quarter of the season, so that's not very good. But let me ask you guys this. As we look at, heading into week 6 now, 5 weeks down, and thinking about this last week, who moved up the most in your mind? As we go into, guessing the lines here, which team added the most in terms of points, towards or against, I guess, the spread, relative to an average team on a neutral field. Ben, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the New York Giants, I would say, probably had the most impressive performance in Week 5, beating Green Bay, on a neutral field in London. They can definitely be somewhat spry, I would say, somewhat good offensively if they do allow Dan Jones to kind of work with his legs. They obviously didn't have, really anything from a wide receiver perspective in this game outside of Darius Slayton. Still kind of got it done against the Green Bay Packers defense. That was supposed to be one of, a top 5 unit in the NFL kind of starting the season. Obviously, they haven't looked that way whatsoever through the first 5 weeks. But I think that, overall, they're a team that I would not have said was for real before this weekend. And I do think that, after the performance in London, they are definitely a team that I at least think, could keep pace enough in the NFC East to at least be in the wild card race when it's all said and done.
Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, even though I like them coming in, but I think it is Dallas, because I think you could poke holes a little bit in who they'd played and some of the quarterbacks they've gone up against so far this year. And yes, so we mentioned the Rams offensive line is struggling. Shout out Joseph Nopum's agent for getting that deal done before the season. That was some artistry right there. But I mean, when you do get Dak Prescott back, and yes, he didn't look great in Week 1 and the half he played, but if you get him back to playing 80% of the pre-contract Dak Prescott, I think that team is. Are they better than the Eagles? I think it's a conversation to be had.
Right.
I mean, so one of the interesting things is they were atrocious offensively. I think Cooper Rush barely got over 100 yards today. They were 22nd in expected points added per early down play this week, but they turned the Los Angeles Rams into a complete disaster. And I guess the question is that sustainable over the long run? And what we know about defense is it's generally not something that is super stable. That said, that defensive line is really, 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 really good. And when they do play a team that has a poor offensive line, they're going to dominate. I think the question is when they face one of these teams that does, and you look at the Eagles do, that will be interesting. And of course, that's next Sunday night. So I think we'll find out relatively quickly. Let me ask you guys this, though. Dak Prescott. It's not in my – I don't want to ask the question, should they stay with Cooper Rush or go back to Dak Prescott? I think the question for me is, would you let Dak Prescott rest longer, given what you've seen out of Cooper Rush? Or are you saying no, like as soon as – humanly possible for Dak Prescott to come back, you are bringing him back?
I would definitely be bringing him back. I think, right? I think, like, especially next Sunday night against Philadelphia, if there's any way that he can possibly be out there, you at least find out what he's capable of. I do think it's not necessarily like the same scenario that the San Francisco 49ers were dealing with, but I don't even want to give Cooper Rush like Jimmy Garoppolo type status right now. But I do think that Dak, much higher ceiling than anything that Cooper Rush could ever offer in that situation, particularly in this offense. So I think you definitely go with Dak Prescott. The talent around them, I would say is a little bit more lacking than what it was last year on the offensive side of football. So I think, long term, when they are up against some of these better teams and not necessarily dominating them defensively, they're going to absolutely need Dak Prescott at his best performance to actually compete and maybe get out of the NFC. So I would say it's not even really a conversation when it's all, when we finally have everybody in place and, he's healthy and everything's moving forward.
Yeah, I would say, look, if he is good enough to play, they've said now, I think they've kind of walked back where their original position. Mm-hmm. Now he needs to get a full week of practice in at 100% in all of those practices. And if that happens, then he will play. And I think that's them kind of hedging against themselves. And I get it to a degree. I mean, this Eagles pass rush, we saw it again today. Hassan Reddick has been playing with his hair on fire. They have so many guys. Brandon Graham looks good again, coming off his injury, even though he's 33 years old, I think. He looks ridiculously good for how old he is and how injured he's been. So it's also maybe like, is it a confidence thing? Is it a, like, you're going to throw him into this fire? I get it's a massive game. It's a maybe NFC East defining matchup, but at the same time, yes, Philly won today, and we're the better team. I'm sure Kevin's adjusted scores is probably better than 2017 based on what I saw, but they won the game at the end by just running the football over and over and over and over again. Like, their drop back passing today was not impressive. And so if Dallas gets an early lead, I think it's an interesting game. I mean, if they're down, I think it's the game's over. But I think if they're up early, it can be an interesting game because we still haven't really seen Philly from behind throw their way back into a game yet this season.
Right.
And they've been a team that has, I mean, they have let other teams back in, right? From a betting perspective, with a backdoor cover today against the Arizona Cardinals is a close 5.5 and ended up winning by 3, but they were up, I think, 14-0. Similar kind of situation in week 1 against the Detroit Lions. I'll say this. I would, in the NFC in particular, I would wait until Dak Prescott is 100% healthy. Just no reason to rush him back given where you're at. And I think your goal has to be to go deep into the playoffs. Right. You are not going to benefit from Dak playing his way into health. You are going to benefit from him coming back healthy and then finding a groove with the offense. It's too early in the season to be like, oh, we need to get him back, need to get him reps. No. You need to get him. I mean, if he comes back Thanksgiving, like at the rate that they're, winning games that they shouldn't be winning, and I don't think they're going to win, with Cooper Rush sustainably against the elite, e.g. the Philadelphia Eagles. But I would not rush, pun intended, Dak Prescott back.
Sorry. Here's the thing, though. Outside of Sunday night, they have the Lions the week after, then they have the Bears both at home. So it's like if he's not coming back for this Eagles game, he probably isn't coming back till mid-November or something like that, right? And I do think we are going to find out some more about the Eagles team specifically. With Jason Kelsey's injury, obviously people didn't think they looked all that good once he was kind of out. They didn't really generate much offensive production. So I do think, if he's out again, Eagles have been really healthy team. Once they kind of start to deal with some of these injury situations, we're going to see, just how strong they actually are, I would say, from top to bottom. So it'll be an interesting spot on Sunday night.
Let's get you out of here on this. Oh, by the way, 2 things. Our main man, Dr. Eric Eager, is in the chat. He commented on the goatee here. Okay, people wondering why I have a goatee. No, I don't think I look good in this goatee. It's ridiculous looking. I have a goatee because I promised the entire PFF team that I would rock a goatee if we got enough survey responses to our quarter of the season survey. And sure enough, they came through. And so now I look like a complete moron. It is not because the New York Jets played so well today. Although I will say, congratulations to the New York Jets. An incredible couple of games. Skylar Thompson is no joke. Okay. So, to come in and to deal with, it's tough when Teddy Bridgewater goes out of that game, a lot of question marks. You're not sure, is this new person that's coming in, is he the greatest quarterback of all time?
No,
Phil. How will you overcome? and they did. And so, no, I'm just kidding. The Jets have looked really good. Sauce Gardner, as advertised, has been fantastic. Garrett Wilson didn't even have to do much today. But I would say if you're looking at, the receiving, if you're redrafting, Garrett Wilson's going higher, as is Chris Olave. no doubt about it. I think it's a little early to hang the banners. Of the 2 New York teams, I think both have been impressive. I guess for you guys, which one has been more impressive thus far? Is it the Jets or the Giants?
Yeah, I'll go with the Giants just because I did not expect them to have, any sort of success early on, especially given their injury situation. So the fact that they are where they are right now, I do think speaks to them actually being not necessarily like a great team, but without Daniel Jones in the fold, I do think that they could have, a number of opportunities, especially offensively, to be a really good football team with Brian DeBoer as the head coach. So I think that they've probably impressed me more than the New York Jets thus far.
Yeah. I mean, today being down 17-3 and coming back and winning that game with a hobbled Daniel Jones throwing to Richie James and Darius Slayton and whatnot was remarkable. But I'll actually go, beating Aaron Rodgers and beating Skylar Thompson is pretty much the same in my book. So I'll go with the New York Jets. No, all jokes aside, I mean, I think their defensive front now with a healthy Carl Lawson, with Quinnen Williams playing with the guy we thought he was going to be, and all the depth they have along that D line, it's hard to deal with. And you talk about Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed on the back end. And then I think Zach Wilson today, no turnover-worthy plays, just the 3rd time in his career. Not any turnover-worthy plays against, a banged-up Miami defense, but he hung 40 on a decent defense today. I think the Jets are trending up.
Been a Robert Salah fan for a while, and I'm happy to see him get a little have a little success there. The Giants have been doing this with a lot of injuries, though, too. I mean, their receiving core is, I mean, there's like no one there, and they're managing to win these games. Saquon Barkley, I think, looks as good as any player in the NFL does right now. And that's fantastic to see as well. Ben, let's get you out of here on this. We've got Chiefs Raiders tomorrow. How are you betting that game, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to buy into the Chiefs one more time in prime time. I do think if you're looking at a 7.5, maybe that's a reason to go to the Raiders. But anything before, the addition of that hook on 7, I think it's Chiefs or bust. I also think Clyde Edwards-Helaire not going to be as involved as what the betting market is pricing, and I do like him to probably go under his reception prop specifically, just not involved whatsoever in the passing game. So I think if they get up early, he's going to kind of be the forgotten left man out. So take his under reception prop. I think is my favorite bet for Monday Night Football.
There it is. That's Ben Brown. You can read all of his great content on the PFF app, which you can go download right now by typing in PFF on the iOS App Store in the US. We're going to expand soon. Don't worry. And of course, also on PFF.com. You can also follow him on Twitter. It's at PFF_Ben Brown. He gives out a ton of really good stuff, posts some fantastic data viz as well. I've heard rumors that I've heard rumors that you can get college props from your boy as well. So definitely go follow him, check him out, and he will be a mainstay on the forecast going forward. Ben, thank you so much. We're going to roll in to guess the lines here in just a second. Of course, I talked to you about the PFF app. Go download it. Make sure that you give it a nice little 5-star review. Leave us a 5-star review with something interesting, funny, or just to take a bet. A member of the printing press. We'll always be respected here. We appreciate it. You can get all of our content on the PFF app as well as our betting dashboards. A couple of new features. We now have a best bets tab for each game, so you can see the best bets, 4 best bets that we have, plus team grading, where you can compare the 2 teams facet by facet, O-line, D-line, wide receiver, tight ends versus coverage as well. Also, go to Underdog. Even though the season has already started, that doesn't mean that you still can't profit at Underdog Fantasy. They have a nice pick'em game that you can go play. All you have to do is guess higher or lower on player props, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. So go download the Underdog app or go to underdogfantasy.com. Use promo code PFF, and they will double your first deposit up to $100. That's promo code PFF at Underdog Fantasy. All right, it's time to guess the lines. We've got a return of Arjun Menon. Arjun, you are noted for being a Chargers fanboy, Justin Herbert fanboy. They had an interesting game today. Obviously, Brandon Staley goes for it. Was it 54 yards away from his own end zone, up to against the Cleveland Browns. First, let me ask you this. Did you agree with the decision? And are you in the minority or the majority of Chargers fans?
I'm definitely in. Okay, so first off, I disagree with the decision in this game specifically, given that Keenan Allen was out, and for that reason only. And I am in the majority of the fan base who said we should have punted. Now, I say I disagree because I think in that situation you do 2 things: you either run the ball or you're throwing the ball to someone who can get open quickly. And the Chargers don't have anyone who can get open quickly without Keenan Allen. And while Mike Williams was going up against like Martin Emerson, like Mike Williams is a deeper developing route type of guy. He's not a quick slant type of guy who can get open like Keenan Allen can. So the problem I had was, in the Chiefs game, Brandon Staley was like, we trust our punter, we trust our defense to hold Mahomes. And yet you can't trust them to hold Jacoby Brissett in a minute in 40 yards, right? Like and I know the Browns had a lot of good drives, but I was just, it seemed like it was conflicting statements by Staley there. And in that case, I mean, it's only 10 yards to get in field goal range. I think I would have punted in that situation, even if the math said go for it.
It was interesting. You can go, there's a lot of different places that publish, win probability, 4th down decision models. I thought a quote from our own Timo Risk today, PFF_Moo, in our Slack chat was very telling, because we were talking about this, and like the NFL Next Gen Stats model was wildly different than Ben Baldwin's 4th down bot. And Timo was like, look, all end of game, 4th down win probability models kind of suck. It's a small sample problem. The nuances of the game are hard to model. Now you can obviously if it's within a couple of percentage points, you can kind of like throw your hands up in the air. But Ben Baldwin's model had this as a 6.5% edge towards going for it. I think, the interesting thing for me and where I'll agree with you a little bit, Arjun, is I want to make Jacoby Brissett beat me. I don't want to let the strength of the Cleveland Browns beat me, right? Which is running the ball and, matriculating it down the football field. So I don't know, from that perspective, I think I could get behind punting. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, so I think the Keenan Allen point is smart for sure. I'll say that I think there's a bigger analytical takeaway from this game than that point, which I'll get to in a second. But I think it's a little bit of results-based analysis. I mean, you mentioned the Browns had moved the ball well. 6 of their 9 drives, they went at least 45 yards. I say 45 because hypothetically, you punt it to their 15-yard line. They need 45 yards to get to your, in kicking range for most kickers. The point I'm going to make, though, is the Browns, who do not have a first-round pick, don't have a fifth-round pick, and don't have first-round picks going forward, spent a fourth-round pick on a kicker, which is a bigger analytical no-no and ridiculous thing to do that no one is talking about. And he missed 2 field goals in this game, including the potential game winner after the Chargers didn't go for it. So I think that is the analytical takeaway that no one is discussing from this game, that you wasted a fourth-round pick on a kicker, and he missed 2 field goals in crunch time.
Your thoughts, Arjun?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think the Browns were probably the better team in this game. Like, they left 6 points on the board with the missed field goals. Jacoby Brissett threw a pick inside the goal to go situation, and they gave the Chargers the ball inside their own like 30 after a failed 4th and 1 run. And yeah, I mean, the Browns didn't have many picks in this draft, and yet they still drafted a kicker. And I remember the sentiment around the time was like, 3 of the sharpest teams in the NFL, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Bills, all took a punter or the kicker in like the 4th or 5th round, right? Like, they drafted a specialist, and no one really talked about it because these are the sharp teams, and maybe we saw like, okay, maybe there is value in taking a kicker, but I guess today proved otherwise. Or that could just be results-based analysis as well, because
it is. No, it definitely is. But
it is fun to discuss, though.
Don't take kickers high. By the way, Arjun is hard to believe, but is a college student at University of Michigan. You can find his betting content. It's fantastic on PFF app as well and pff.com. Arjun, you have been betting a lot of in-game stuff, which I've seen, but how did your bets do this week? How did everything go for you?
Yeah, props. Unfortunately for my written stuff, went 2 and 3. CeeDee Lamb dropped a sitter on the sideline that would have cashed the over 5.5. I think I did pretty well with spreads this week. Was on the right side of the Chargers, I got them at 1.5 on Sunday. And then one of my favorite plays was Eagles first half -3. And I was like praising the heavens when Cliff Kingsbury kicked it from his own 2 with 7 seconds left on 3rd and goal. So had a pretty good week, finished in the green, and excited to be doing this for the first time.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. You can always count on Cliff Kingsbury to kick a short field goal. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. As usual, if anyone's new members of the printing press here, we guess the lines. We don't know what they are yet. We try to keep ourselves, pure, I guess. And then we're going to decide whether we want to bet any of the discrepancies that we have here. Buys this week. We finally have buys. We have the Lions. Thank God we don't have to watch them again. The Houston Texans, the Vegas Raiders, and the Tennessee Titans. So we start in Chicago with the Commanders and the Bears. I'll start with you, Brad. So, by the way, we got some feedback last time. We're a little long-winded here. So we're just going to go around the horn, just say what we have the line at. And then when we are deciding whether we're going to bet them or not, we'll talk about our analysis here. So start with you, Brad, then go to you, Arjun.
Yep. Thursday night, I got the Bears as a pick 'em against the Washington Commanders.
All right, I have the Commanders as -2-point favorites against the Bears.
Oh wow, okay. I have this as a pick as well. Let's see here on BetMGM. This is Bears -1.5. I guess nothing outside of 3, obviously. Brad, what are you doing with this one?
I'm staying away. I think it could go any direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Washington had a pretty good day offensively, actually. Best EPA per play this week on early down passes. But I will probably be the last person to buy Carson Wentz at the top of the market. So I'm staying away as well. What about you, Arjun?
I actually think I'm gonna bet the Commanders here. I think the one thing the Bears do very well, which is run the ball, plays straight into Washington's defensive strength. Pretty much a top 10 run defense by most metrics, rushing success rate allowed, rushing EPA allowed per play. So I think the Bears struggle to move the ball a little bit. And I mean, you talked about it. You're kind of buying Carson Wentz at the top of his market, but that's kind of what you want to do. I think you have to ride the wave when Wentz is performing at a high, and eventually he's going to fall off a cliff like he did last year. But he put together some pretty good 2 or 3 game stretches. So, if Jalen Johnson is out, I don't know who's going to be able to cover Terry McLaurin. We saw Justin Jefferson tear up that Bears secondary today. So I do like the Commanders in this spot.
Yeah, I will say this about the Commanders. They do not seem to want to throw Terry McLaurin the ball often enough. Maybe they figured out in this game. Early slate on Sunday. A few good games, although I will say most of them I think are later in the day. We'll start with San Francisco going to Atlanta. Brad, what you have?
I have the Falcons plus 5.5 in this game.
Arjun?
Yeah, I have the Falcons plus 6.5.
All right. I have 6.5 as well. It is currently 6 on our friends over at BetMGM. Brad, what are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I mean, we talked last week. I'm not really sure why we weren't a consensus on the on 49ers against the Panthers last week. It even opened at, I want to say 4.5, 5 and moved to 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Nick Bosa's groin injury looked relatively serious. They obviously still generated pressure without him, but Armstead already out. Bosa may be out as well. As much as I love this team and we all had him top 5 in our power rankings, not a big Atlanta believer. I'm probably staying away here too.
What about you, Arjun?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay away unless the line moves down to like 4.5 or something, which I doubt it does. But I don't know if the Niners pour it on like they did today.
Yeah, the Niners were a minus 6.5 was one of my Circa Millions bets this week, but they come out of that game. You mentioned Nick Bosa, also Emmanuel Mosley, who I haven't confirmed this, but I think it's a pretty serious injury. So, that's not great. This is something that tends to happen to the Niners a lot. It feels like where they get bitten by the injury bug. So I am probably staying away as well, though I'll say this, the Falcons, I don't know how they covered against the Tampa Bay Bucs. They were kind of scary, but managed to. New England goes to Cleveland. Bill Belichick returning to Cleveland, where, of course, he once coached. Brad, would you have this?
I got the Browns laying a field goal.
I think I want to be off market here. I have the Browns getting 5 points at home.
Wow. Getting 5. Oh my God.
He's got the Zappy fever.
Look at that.
Oh, wait, no, I meant it the other way. Sorry. Browns minus 5.
Browns minus 5.
I mixed up my terminology. I'm not that off market.
Okay. I have Cleveland by 2 in this one. And it is Cleveland by 3. They're getting a full field goal here. Brad, what do you think about this one?
He might be frozen. I can jump in.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I
kind of like the Browns, right?
Yeah, I kind of like the Browns here. Like the Patriots' run defense has been exposed in previous games. Like they ranked pretty bad in terms of rush EPA before this Lions game, and they kind of shut Jared Goff and Jamal Williams down. But this Browns rush attack is the best in the NFL. Before this game, they had a better rush EPA than 26 NFL teams pass EPA, which is absolutely absurd. And I think this game at home for the Browns, I think they're going to lean on Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt all the way and try to prevent any type of defensive looks that Bill Belichick is going to throw at Jacoby Brissett.
The Patriots, you mentioned that they are just 24th in the league in expected points per play allowed on early down runs. So what I do think is amazing there, just to show you the inefficiency of the running game, is that's still negative, but it is not good relative to the rest of the league. I think I'm probably going to stay away from this one, although I will say if this ends up being a 2.5 at some point, that I think that the Patriots are a decent teaser leg. Reason being, Jacoby Brissett. I kind of have a feeling that Bill Belichick, given that he coached him for a little while, is going to have a little bit of a beat on what he wants to do. And so I think that would be the play that I would have here. Total on this game is 42.5. I don't know that I'm buying into the Bailey Zappi led offense quite yet. Brad, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know. I dropped out. The Brissett point's a great call. That kind of has me in my head now after the masterpiece that Bill Belichick just put on today. But I'll be honest, I've bet the Browns every week so far except for week 2. Atlanta was a disaster loss, but they've covered for me 3 of those 4 times. They're a good football team. I mean, they're good on both sides of the ball. They obviously need to fix the middle of their defense, and they tried to do that by trading for Deion Jones. He's on IR, so who knows if he even plays in this game. But I might, if it gets under a field goal, which I think with Zappy Mania sweeping the nation, it might. I might take them if it's less than a field goal. Yeah. Jets.
No one's hotter than the Jets. By the way, I will point out for anyone that is not aware, it looks as though Zach Wilson has a new girl, and she's under the age of 40. In fact, she looks remarkably similar to his previous girlfriend. It is not, though, his previous girlfriend. So maybe that's the reason he's playing so well. Jets are playing in Green Bay against the Packers, who have failed to cover 2 straight weeks. Brad, would you make this?
Yeah, I had Green Bay laying 8 here.
I had Green Bay laying 7.5.
All right. I have Green Bay -7. It looks like most places have it at 7.5, although it's a little bit shaded towards 7. But consensus is about -7.5. Brad, what are you thinking?
The Packers killed me today. I obviously liked them a lot last week. The Jets, their defensive front is pretty good. Bakhtiari played not every series today. Everything is so difficult for the Packers. You watch them; they have to have these 14-play sustained drives, and eventually Christian Watson drops the ball or someone messes up in some respect. And then defense, too. The Giants didn't have like a fluky – they had a couple big Saquon Barkley plays, but they had methodical drives with Daniel Jones, who couldn't run and who was bleeding out of his throwing hand, and they were just moving the ball down the field like very, systemically. So I'm not going to bet the Jets, but I'm definitely not betting the Packers.
I got to say this. I'm tempted. I am really tempted to take the Jets. The Green Bay Packers offense does not scare me. It just doesn't scare me. And I think they need Romeo Doubs to step up a little bit. That you're listening to Mark Sanchez on the call in London today talking about how Aaron Rodgers is doing some of this newfangled college stuff and might keep it on an RPO. And if that's what you're hoping for with the Green Bay Packers at this point, that speaks volumes. And I like what Robert Salah is doing. So I'm not sure that the Jets are going to win this game, but I think I'm gonna say this here. I'm gonna take the Jets +7.5. Arjun, what about you?
I'm gonna just stay away. This was the toughest game for me to guess, just because I feel like people kind of overreacting to the Jets being 3-2 against Skylar Thompson, Kenny Pickett, and a fluky win against Jacoby Brissett where they should have lost that game. So I mean, I think the victory today was impressive for sure. And then also on the flip side, how much should we be reacting to the Packers coming off back-to-back one-score games against Bailey Zappi and Daniel Jones without his top 3 receivers? So it's tough to, I think, price that overreaction into the market. So I think this is just a stay-away game for me.
Let it be known.
Real
Jets
quick,
super fan.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying. I just wanted to make it very well known that I'm a Jets super fan now.
You've pivoted already. You're back on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I had the Jets over this year, win total wise. So
I am 6.5. What did you get it at?
Yes, 6.5.
Yeah. Just real quick, both London teams from last week in New Orleans and Minnesota. Technically, I guess Minnesota may have lost if you bet them after they added the hook, but won by 7, so maybe push. And the Saints obviously covered, so I think I may have been overvaluing, that London trip. Maybe modern technology makes that less of a big deal. So that also is kind of in my head a little bit. But yeah, these Packers are just not scary.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, are you expecting the Packers to come out and, prove everyone wrong after a loss, or are they just, are they just not as strong as they were in the past, and they've yet to kind of figure out their offense? We go to Indianapolis, division game here, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who beat the brakes off the Colts in Jacksonville just a few weeks ago. Traveling to Indy. Brad, what do you have?
I had the Colts laying 2.5.
Arjun?
I had this at a pick 'em.
Okay. I've got Indy minus 1.5. It is Indy minus 1.5 in most places. This is a tricky one for me. I'll start here. I have this on the number. I don't think that that I want to bet this in any way, shape, or form. I am interested, though, to see what the Colts do. I thought Matt Ryan looked lost, washed, whatever it is that you want to call it. It's interesting. I just am fascinated by what the Colts have done from a team building perspective. I generally like Frank Reich a lot and, think highly of Chris Ballard, but man, it does not look good there. Brad, what about you?
The Colts interior offensive line on Thursday had a $20 million per year left guard, a $12.5 million per year center. He did get hurt. And then a $17.5 million right tackle who kicked into right guard. They're paying $50 million a year for their interior in that game, and their interior did nothing in that game. So they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass protect. I was like, this is the worst ROI I've ever seen in my entire life. I think we all kind of just are worse off for watching that game. But that being said, I don't hate the Colts. A little bit of extra rest, laying less than a field goal. I don't hate that.
I can understand the extra rest part. To me, I don't really know how much rest affects certain things. The Jags, traveled cross country to play my Chargers, who were on 10 days rest after the Chiefs game and throttled them. So, it's the same case here where Jags are on the road against a team with 10 days rest. And I don't know if I bet the Jags here because Trevor Lawrence has had some serious regression after the first 3 games. Last week, he had like a 27.7 PFF grade, which is like awful. And, today he couldn't even score a touchdown against the Texans. So, it's a tough one. I think the Jags have the advantage in the trenches, which is why I put this at a pick 'em. But I need to really look at what's going on with Trevor Lawrence at that offense before I make a bet on the Jags. So I'm laying off for now.
I would blame Urban Meyer. Minnesota goes to Miami. I don't know if Brad, is there any news on Teddy and or Tua? Who do we expect at quarterback here?
So Teddy was a concussion and like a foot or ankle, I want to say. There were some indications that basically if this wasn't coming off of Tua, that Teddy Bridgewater probably stays in this game. It was kind of like is this a bit of a overreaction type thing? So I think one of those guys will play. For some reason I don't have it listed on my sheet here. So I'll throw it where it's at Miami. I'll throw off the top of my head. I'll take Miami -1.
Okay.
Yeah. I have this as a pick 'em as well.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see. If it was Skylar Thompson, I would have Miami +3. I think if it's Tua, I like Dolphins by 3. Thompson is not particularly good. But I'm not really sure. Is it going to be Teddy? Is it going to be Tua? Is one of them going to be hurt? So I made it Dolphins -2.5. It is, I guess, 3 in a couple of places. Not everywhere has this on the board. Looks like consensus around 2.5, 3. Brad, if this was 2.5, what would you do with it?
So for me, honestly, I care a lot about Xavier Howard. I think his absence was very notable today. And their front is not as good as I thought it was and just has not played as well as I think they should. But I think if Xavier Howard does play in this game and can do something to Justin Jefferson, he just ran wide open to Chicago, just played soft zone, and it just let him do whatever he wanted. But if Xavier Howard plays, I think I might take Miami here, even laying the field goal. Minnesota is just not I mean, they let Chicago back in this game. They should have lost to Saints in London. They're just not a good 4-1 football team.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I don't think they're a true 4-1, but I kind of like the Vikings in the spot, even if Xavier Howard plays, simply because two things. I think the Dolphins coverage scheme plays perfectly into what the Vikings want, because no one, in my opinion, can guard Justin Jefferson one-on-one consistently throughout an entire game. Brad's Bears kind of saw what happened when you don't have a good corner on him and they torched him. And if Xavier Howard's out, I mean, Jefferson's probably going for 100 yards again next week. So that's number one. And number two, the Viking style of defense kind of limits what the Dolphins can do on offense. Ed Donatell comes from the Vic Fangio's coaching tree, a lot of too high, a lot of quarters, cover 3, cover 6. And so that kind of limits, the Dolphins deep ball stuff and forces you to be super efficient underneath. And I know Tua's had a good rapport with Waddle and Hill, but if they're not able to generate some of those explosive plays down the field, I do kind of like the Vikings being able to put a dent in this Dolphins season so far. So I think I'm going to bet the Vikings in this spot.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I think I would say this as well. I like Vikings if it's 2.5 at where you're betting. I think they're a really great teaser leg. Especially with all the unknowns in Miami. We go to New Orleans. Cincinnati goes to New Orleans, plays the Fighting Taysom Hills. Brad, would you have this?
The Fighting Taysom Hills. It's again a question mark at quarterback. I think Jameis Winston could be available for this game. With Taysom, you don't even need him apparently. I would go New Orleans laying 2.5.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm crossing 3. I have New Orleans laying 4.5 here.
Okay. I have New Orleans at exactly 3. I am thinking that James is back in this game. If it is Andy Dalton, I would have Saints by 1. It looks like it is Saints by 1. I don't know if that means the market is hedging a little bit or if they think it's going to be Dalton. Brad, what are you doing with this?
Yeah, I might take the Bengals, honestly. I'm not even sure if Jameis is, I don't think, going to be 100% healthy. I mean, he has like broken vertebrae or whatever the case is. It's more about, I think, pain management and just tolerance of the pain than actually being healthy. I mean, the Saints, they obviously scored today, but it was a bunch of explosives. They didn't actually sustain a ton of drives today against an awful Seattle defense. I might take our Bengals again in this one.
Arjun, what about you?
Yeah, no, I don't understand this line at all. I don't really know how the Saints are favored in this game. The Saints. So this is what happened, right? All of the Seahawks touchdowns were 22 yards or more. The one thing the Bengals have not been able to do this season is generate explosive plays, and because they're forced to sustain so many of these drives, it results in a failed goal line 4th and 2 attempt or a field goal. I think this is like a get right game for the Saints. And I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, both come from LSU. This is like basically like going to be a neutral stadium in my opinion. Like I really like the Bengals in the spot, and Jameis or no Jameis, the Bengals D is legit. So I like them to get stops in New Orleans and also put up a lot of points, I think, in a game where I think the Bengals have the advantage on the outside.
Yeah, the only thing I'll mention is I'd be a little worried about Cam Jordan and then Davenport on the other side would be, the Bengals O-line still looks bad. But it's a great point about Burrow and Chase coming home. I wonder what that stadium will be like. Baltimore goes to New York, plays the Giants in the Meadowlands. Brad, would you make this?
Yeah. I didn't prepare for our Sunday night. That's on me. I would go Giants. I'll say plus a full field goal.
Wow, Arjun.
Yeah, I have Giants 3.5 plus 3.5.
I have Giants plus 2.5. I wasn't going to go all the way to 3. I'm a little nervous about the Ravens. I wasn't overly impressed with their offense today. It is Mark Andrews and like whatever Lamar can cook up. The Ravens are. This is interesting here. Maybe I'm getting this does not feel right to me. It says where I'm looking that the two books that have it up are -5.5 and -6, which cannot. There's no way that's right. right?
Yeah, that's a lot of points.
I have to be. Let me check somewhere else here. I guess it's on the wrong side. So the place that I'm looking at is a bunch of aggregated ones. It's Baltimore. Early look ahead line is Baltimore -6 here.
That's a lot of points. And I think Wink Martindale is going to be headhunting in this game. His departure from Baltimore was not a happy one. My understanding is he wanted an extension and a raise. Instead, he got fired. So I think he'll be dialing a lot of stuff up in this game. I think you maybe get Azeez Ojulari back to be opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, who looked good today against Green Bay. If it's 6 points, I mean, sheesh. I might bet the Giants if it's 6.
Yeah, maybe let me check one more place here. It is that's what it is. It is Baltimore golf odds. Jeff Sherman, who does the Superbooks odds, has Baltimore -5.5. I'm taking the Giants as well. What about you, Arjun?
Yeah, I think 6 is too many points. And like the thing about the Giants, not even from like an analytics perspective, like they just fight. Like they're like probably one of the most like scrappiest teams in the NFL. Like don't really have a lot of talent on either side of the ball, but Wink and Dable have them playing hard, fighting hard, and I mean they took this Packers team to the brink and came out with the W. So I do like them getting 6 here.
Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got the brakes beaten off of them as a 14.5 point underdog. Brad, what do you make this?
I got the Bucks laying a full touchdown.
Yeah, I have the same.
I made it. I crossed the full touchdown. I have Pittsburgh +8.5 here. And it looks like it is +7.5. Brad, what are you doing with this one?
I mean, I'm just not really a believer in Tampa Bay right now. At the same time, though, like I think their biggest issue is their offensive line. I mean, Atlanta can't generate a pass rush, and they still kind of did with Grady Jarrett today. Pittsburgh could not generate a pass rush on Buffalo at all today either, but I think they'll scheme up enough. I'm not taking Pittsburgh, but I'm not comfortable laying a touchdown on the road with this Tampa Bay team right now.
Yeah, I feel that. Arjun?
Yeah, I think this is probably a good teaser leg, if anything, for Tampa. But yeah, full touchdown on the road is not ideal.
Yeah, I can't do it either, man. They let the Falcons back in. It's just it does not look cohesive there. I liked the way Kenny Pickett played today, even though they got destroyed. I thought a lot of this was Tomlin. I mean, they should have gone for it a couple of different times. That makes it, that much closer of a game. I don't think they end up covering, but yeah, I don't know, man. I do like the teaser leg angle with Tampa Bay. Carolina, and I guess Baker Mayfield will still be playing for them, although he was in a walking boot after the game, playing the Los Angeles Rams, two of the most disappointing teams in the NFL thus far. Brad, would you make this?
Yeah, Baker taking a page out of Russell Wilson's book with the shoulder operation this week, I think. It was a classic Big Ben, throw the walking boot on, tough loss. I have it LA -8.5.
Yeah, I have it LA -8.
Okay. I have 7.5. It is 9.5.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. So not a lot of faith in Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. What are you doing with this one, Brad?
I think this one is a potential, I'll be honest, I'm not even sure if Matt Rule's coaching in this game. I don't know anything, but I don't think it's a guarantee he is. I think Halloween's going to be extra spooky in the Rule household. I don't know if he'll be here by the time Halloween comes around. That being said, I thought I was being generous with the 8.5.
No.
I mean, Carolina can generate a pass rush. They kind of didn't today without Trent Williams. They still didn't really do much to stop the 49ers. But the Rams are just not a good football team right now. I'm not betting Carolina, but I'm not taking the Rams laying 9.5 points.
What about you, Arjun?
Yeah, no, I can't bet Baker Mayfield at all unless I'm betting his unders or his over interceptions. So definitely staying away from this game. And I think Brad kind of stole my angle where Carolina's D-line was, I think, okay coming into the year, but Brian Burns is kind of the only one who's really doing anything. And Rams just have no interior offensive line, which it does kind of seem like Sean McVay's play calling is kind of dependent on how good his offensive line is, at least from an efficiency perspective, which kind of does suck given, the state of their offensive line right now. So definitely staying away from this game.
Arizona, goes to Seattle to play the Seahawks. Brad, what'd you make this?
I had Seattle +1 at home.
Yeah, I had Seattle +1 as well.
All right, no faith in Geno Smith. I have the Seahawks favored here. I think they're the better team. They deserve to be favored. I did not cross 3, but I have the Seahawks favored by 2.5. I wrote on my sheet, LOL, because this is the perfect, I think, microcosm of the NFL season. The Seahawks are favored against a team that started 8-0 last year. It is Arizona by 2.5. I'll just start it out. I have not bet a bunch of games thus far based on the early lines, but I think Seattle as a teaser, I know that this is going to be a higher total, so I don't love that. I think total right now is at 50.5. I think, Seattle money line would be plays here. What about you guys?
Yeah, I would tease it. I would definitely look into teasing it. I'm not sure if I would take Seattle, without moving it up to 8.5, crossing the key numbers. I mean, they just cannot generate a pass rush in any way, shape, or form. And Kyler starting to round to form a little bit. I think he ran the ball more in the second half and was willing to use his legs. Kind of hasn't been willing to at all really this year. I don't know if it's because he got hurt last year or what, but has not really been using that part of his game. So yeah, I like Seattle in teasers for sure. Would not take them by itself.
Okay, I'm not betting this full game. I don't trust Seattle to pull it out in the end. I do have an angle I love, and it's probably going to be my biggest bet of the week, and it's going to be Seattle first half, like money line or like plus 0.5. Before this week, Seattle had the third best offense in the first half per EPA per play. Cardinals were dead last. This was an angle I used to bet, Eagles -3 first half that I talked about earlier. Seattle today put up 19 points, beat the Saints on the road in the first half. And Seattle's won the first half 4 out of the 5 games they've played. I'm going to give a shout out to our friend Judah Fortgang, who has his own drive quality metric. And he found that the Seahawks had a top pretty much 3 offense in terms of scripted plays, and the Cardinals were bottom 10. So all signs right now point to Seattle being the better team in the early part of the game, and they're going to be at home. Cardinals have this thing where Kyler just turns into like super Kyler at the end of games and starts backdoor covering everything. So I don't trust Seattle full game here, but I absolutely love their first half angle, even though I'm not going to count that in our official plays.
No, I love that, especially because it's an anti-cliff angle. Okay, game of the week, potentially of the season thus far. It is Buffalo in Kansas City. It was funny. Jim Nance and Tony Romo were calling the Steelers-Bills game this week, and they started talking about Steelers-Chiefs midway through the first quarter. That was the type of game that it was. So this one will be a lot of fun. Brad, would you make a spread here? I'm very interested on the heels of our power rating conversation, what you end up here, given that we're in Kansas City.
Yeah, even in Kansas City, I went pick 'em, which, with home field advantage, 1.5, technically would say Buffalo's a better team. So I went pick 'em.
What about you?
I went pick 'em as well.
It is 3 pick-ems across the board here, and it looks as though Buffalo is favored. Now, they're not getting across 3, but the consensus out there is 2. The Bills favored by 2. Obviously, the Chiefs play tomorrow. So we'll see what they look like. I guess, the question here is, how are we betting this game, if at all? Brad, what are you thinking?
So I would say, the extra day of rest isn't huge, but it's also, Buffalo basically played a half of football today, which I think does help a lot. Their starters did not play pretty much the entire second half of the game. This is my Super Bowl rematch. Shout out Kevin Cole. This is my adjusted Super Bowl rematch of the season. So, I think Buffalo's going to be so pissed off. They've probably been thinking about 13 seconds for every single night when they lay their head on the pillow. That being said, I don't care. If Chiefs getting the points at home, I don't care who it is. I will take the Chiefs money line plus money. Yeah, all day long.
I have to ride with Brad on that one. But I do like the Chiefs in this matchup. I actually think, I think the Chiefs could maybe be favored in this game. The angle with I have, so the Bills this season playing a ton of zone coverage. They're basically playing cover 1 11.6% of the time. And in my opinion, I think the way to beat the Chiefs this year is to play man, because they don't have anyone that can separate outside of Travis Kelce.
Mm-hmm.
Like last 4 years under Mahomes, you couldn't play man because of Tyreek Hill, but they don't have anyone that can separate. Now, Mahomes has been shredding zone coverage this year. And last week, I thought the Bucs were going to go heavy in man, but they came out and covered 2, 4, 6 about 60% of the time, and we saw what Mahomes did to that. So if the Bills come out in that game plan as well, I think Mahomes shreds that coverage as well. But the flip side is, even if the Bills change it up, go cover 1 and try to lock down in man, I don't think they have the talent advantage on the outside to win in cover 1. So even though the Bills' offense is a house, I'm still taking Mahomes and Andy Reid at home against the Bills here. So riding with our Chiefs.
Yeah, man. The thing that scares me, I think, a little bit about this one is the Bills' pass rush has been so solid without any need to blitz. Von Miller, 4th out of 108 edge defenders in PFF grade thus far. Greg Rousseau is a top 20 graded guy. And you look at the tackles for the Chiefs, Orlando Brown Jr., 47th out of 69 tackles in PFF grade. Andrew Wiley is 33rd. Not particularly great, right? The strength for them has been on the interior. And I would worry. I mean, I would honestly worry about Von Miller kind of just winning this game kind of outright. So I think that the play that I would make here is honestly potential is a teaser, even though it's a big, it's obviously the biggest total of the weekend. So you don't love that. And there's something about this that I can't quite bring myself to trust the Chiefs. I think if you knew you were getting their 85th percentile game, then yes, I would take them. But there's always these games where it's just like, what the hell, man? And the Bills, this is their Super Bowl. So, you would expect them obviously to come out guns blazing. So I'm actually helping you guys out here, because if we made it a clean sweep and we all took the Chiefs, there was no way that they were going to win. So you guys are welcome. Wow.
We good?
We are alive. That was my new light that I got. I'm in my new place, and I got a ring light to try and.
You were looking radiant. I could tell.
Yeah, I was looking good, and it was right on the edge of the desk.
goatee was bouncing off the goatee.
That was what I was trying to do. It was at the edge of the desk, so I got excited about the Chiefs and knocked to the ground.
Real quick, I will say to Arjun's point, now that you mention it, yes, Kelce is the one horse Casey has, and Matt Milano might be the best coverage linebacker in the NFL. True. So I mean, that's a big component of it too. Where if that matchup is in favor of Buffalo, at least on some snaps, of course not going to be all the snaps, but that's a huge potential edge for Buffalo. I'm not wavering off my pick, but it could work in their favor. I just think the injuries they have on the back end right now, you have to take Casey.
Yeah, can Casey take advantage though? I think that's a legit.
No, that's fair.
That's a legitimate question. Matt Milano, by the way, highest graded linebacker in the NFL thus far. All right, Sunday night, Dallas, Philly. So, Brad, is it expected that this is Cooper Rush again, or what is the word right now?
So, yeah, like I said, the verbiage has really changed to where it went from we could see Dak in 2 weeks to, we'll see how it goes, to now it's he needs to have a full week of practice where he's 100% fully practicing in every single day, like no limiteds, no whatever. And I think it's them trying to kind of waffle and just not stick with it. So I'm going to lay the spread here, assuming that it's kind of a middle ground hedge where it could be Dak, could be Cooper Rush. I had the Eagles laying 4.5 at home.
Yeah, I have Eagles -5 in this game.
Okay. I think they're gonna rock with Cooper Rush again. I think they're gonna try and get a W with Cooper. And I think the reason for that is this: if you bring Dak back and you get the doors blown off you, it's a really bad look, right? And you go, well, that was that was the Dallas Cowboys at their best. You bring Cooper Rush out there and you keep it close, and it's like, hey, be worried. When we have Dak back and we're at full strength, we've got something on you. And I just wouldn't let the Eagles have a chance at Dak Prescott in his first game back. I just think I just wouldn't do it. So I have Eagles by 5.5. And that is the number here. It is Eagles by 5.5. Oh, sorry. I have Eagles by 4.5. It is Eagles by 5.5. I think I would bet the Cowboys here. I do. I don't have a ton of faith in Cooper Rush, but the Eagles, as good as they have not been consistent throughout the entirety of a game. And so, with a spread like 5.5, I just think taking the underdog here makes a lot of sense, especially with how good the Cowboys have been from a pass rush perspective. They've been really dynamite. What about you, Brad?
Yeah, I think you could say this about every game, so it's kind of like lazy analysis, but it's such a game script game to me. We talked about this a little bit earlier, where if Dallas can get an early lead, I like them a lot, because I think if you can have Parsons and those guys pinning their ears back, knowing Philly's probably going to throw the football, I think that's a matchup they can take advantage of, and they can win on a consistent basis. I've been riding Dallas. And you said it last week, and I think it's a good point. I'm not sure first week of Dak returning is actually better than Cooper Rush. Look, we're not saying quarterback controversy in Dallas. We're not crazy, but first game he returned is a little bit rough.
I think he's cutting out, right?
Yeah, I think he's the internet in Queens ain't great. Arjun, what are you doing with this one?
I'm gonna lay off a full game. I'm gonna use the same first half angle. I don't know if I'm gonna bet it yet, but I loved your point about how the Eagles aren't consistent. They had before this week the second highest EPA per play in the first half of games, dropped to below average in the second half of games. So we saw the Cardinals come in and backdoor cover that game. So if anything, it's going to be Eagles first half, but I need to think a little bit about it, just because Jordan Mailata hasn't played this week, and you need to have that offensive line at full strength to go up against the elite Cowboys D-line.
It's super interesting, right? Because I guess it's a great point about the Eagles first half. Do you trust Cooper Rush to get you through the back door? I think that, to Brad's point, right, if the Cowboys can get out, and keep it close, or even have a lead, you feel good about them, covering. But that's antithetical to the way that the Eagles have played. I think that I would watch the reports on Micah Parsons. He was a little gimpy today. If for some reason they decide to hold him out, that would definitely worry me. But I think if you have all those horses across the defensive line, then I would roll with the Cowboys here. Brad is back just in time for us to close it out, thankfully, with another Russell Wilson primetime game. I cannot wait. I can't wait for the discourse on Monday night about Russell Wilson. They go to Los Angeles. They play the Chargers. Brad, would you make this one? Is he back?
He was back.
He was for a second. Arjun, your Chargers hosting Russell Wilson. What do you make it?
I have the Chargers getting I have the Chargers at -5 in this game.
Alrighty. I made the Chargers a 4.5-point favorite, and I actually I didn't feel great about 4.5. I was thinking about 4. I think I was leaning that direction. And I'm surprised the spread here is Chargers by 6.5, which surprised me. Brad, what'd you make it?
Yeah, I had Chargers 5.5. I'm sorry. You bought a ring light. I guess I'm going to buy some RAM this week. Everyone's got their upgrades to do. 6 is a lot of points, but Denver is atrocious. I still might take the Chargers. I know Arjun probably loves to hear that. I mean, no Garrett Bowles now. Ronald Darby, I think, is an underrated injury. He's been good this year. I mean, he's a good corner when he's healthy. I think I still might like Chargers laying that many points.
Wow. Arjun, what are you doing with it?
I'm staying away from the spread, man. I don't typically bet on Chargers games unless I have a true conviction. I do like the under in this game, depending on what it is. I know Brad kind of tweeted out the divisional unders have been on a heater this year. The primetime unders have been on a heater. And while I obviously don't really encourage people to bet strictly off of trends, I do think, it doesn't hurt to incorporate these type of things into your analysis. And, Justin Herbert hasn't always done well against the Broncos defense and a Vic Fangio style defense. I think they should be getting Justin Simmons back. So maybe that counters the loss of Ronald Darby. And look, man, the Browns defense was atrocious today. The Broncos run defense is much better. And I don't think the Chargers are going to be able to run the ball as well as they did. And I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Patrick Surtain, Mike Williams matchup. especially in the red zone.
Is Keenan Allen supposed to be back for this one? What's the deal here?
It's a hamstring, and it's been an issue for him for the longest time. Arjun probably can speak to that even more so. It's a toss-up. He basically was close to coming back last week and then tweaked it in a Friday practice. He's a guy where you just don't know. And I think you do need him. You mentioned needing a guy that can get open quickly. I think this Broncos defense, you need that so badly. I mean, we saw it against Indianapolis, obviously. Shout out their DC, Ejiro Evero, who's been phenomenal this year. They have horses, but I think it's also just been a great scheme and a great coaching there. If Keenan plays, I think it makes a massive difference, and I don't know if he's going to.
Yeah, I'm tempted to take the stinkiest dog by far of the week, which is the Denver Broncos. But I like Arjun's angle there. Total at 46.5. The Denver Broncos offense obviously stinks to high heaven. And, the Chargers are an interesting spot with, Keenan Allen potentially not being there, the Broncos run defense being solid, and then Patrick Surtain, who has been as good as any corner, I think, in the NFL so far this year, and has deservedly so gotten a ton of praise. So I think that matches up well for Denver. And I'll say this. I get the Russell Wilson corniness jokes will never not be funny to me, never not be funny to me. But I think that this week, it's gone a little too far, and the football gods have to be like, look, okay, Russ, you're corny as hell, but we kind of feel bad for you at this point. And yeah, I mean, I guess maybe this line also is taking into account the fact that Wilson is apparently injured, or at least claims to be, right. But man, I think 6.5 is a little too many for a Chargers team that, quite frankly, should have lost today if Cade York could have made a field goal. Okay, Arjun, you by far have the most early bets. Which are your favorites thus far?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love that Seattle first half bet, but that's yeah. But otherwise, I mean, I kind of like the Bengals. I was kind of low on them most of the offseason, but I think this is just a get right game for them in New Orleans, and against the Saints team I was also very high on, but have kind of disappointed me. So I would say Seattle first half and Bengals spread or money line, whatever. If Saints are favored, I'm taking Bengals straight up.
Brad, what about you?
Yeah, Bengals on my list as well. So they might be a social again or very well liked again. And then sometimes it's meathead. It's not really analysis, but you get the Kansas City Chiefs plus money at home. It's just sometimes, something's offered to you and it's put up on a platter like that. And you'd be silly not to swing for the fences. So I think those two are my favorite.
Like both of those, I think the Seattle first half against Clifford, the big red dog is a really good one. I like it. But I just do not understand how the New York Giants are 6-point underdogs at home to the Baltimore Ravens. I love Lamar Jackson's amazing. I love the Ravens team. This does not make sense to me. So I think that's my favorite one. And I like Dallas plus 5.5 in Philadelphia. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are really, really good. They're a very good team. It's a divisional game. And the Dallas Cowboys, they have a lot of talent. It's not as if they are bereft of talent, even though Dak Prescott is not out there. So I think those are my two favorites. You can follow both these guys, by the way, on Twitter at PFF_Brad. It's at Arjun Menon 100. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
What is the significance of the 100?
It's supposed to be 10, but 10 was taken, so I just added an extra 0. And I didn't think this Twitter account was going to be anything big when I started it.
Apparently, you need to get a goatee next time that to join the podcast. But
yeah,
I don't know if it's coming in thick enough for you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for hanging out, members of the Printing Press. We appreciate you as usual. You can check us out on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights as well. We're going to write up our favorite early picks, early spread bets, and that will be posted on PFF's app and PFF.com. So if you're listening to this on a Monday morning, go check it out. We love you all. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.